Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Conversations in Pop Culture, where I have with me returning guest, and I'm going to get the name right this time, Travis Gibb. I got the name right, so clearly we're off to the races right from the start, so welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me. I love being on the show. You're one of my favorite guests, because you actually research the guest you're talking to, maybe read something. It's something very rare that we don't get a lot as someone who does a lot of interviews.
I try, and I try to do my best with everybody who's on, and I really put forth the best effort that I can put forth, and sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But a lot has been going on since the last time we spoke, I believe about 4 months ago, which is crazy because it feels like years ago on my end. I don't know how it feels on your end, but it feels like years, if not decades.
Yeah, it's been crazy. I mean, it's been a wild ride for sure.
And so we obviously spoke about Voodoo Nations and broke down and Four Dead Bodies. And I promise we're going to touch upon that, but I do want to talk about not the elephant in the room, but a magical land called Oz and Cthulhu. Because you have an anthology that's on Kickstarter, which is Cthulhu Invades Oz. It's about $3,000 away from being funded. I think there's 5 days left, I want to say.
Yep, 5 days. I'm not sure when this is going to air, but right now there's 5 days, to get funded. So I need to raise that, $3,000. And I have, 52 creators who are like, hey, is this going to happen? Is this not? And it's a crazy time. Like off air, we were just talking. There's like 306 campaigns live on Kickstarter. Last year at this time, there was 121. That's a huge difference. So there's a lot of stuff to choose from. But I think we have a good book to choose.
So we are live. I want to make sure you understand that.
I didn't even know that. Hey,
we're streaming live for
just there's 5 days.
so nothing, no pressure here in that regard. But even to go off of that,
pants. Hold on, pause.
but even to go off of that, because we were speaking about that off air a little bit with the amount of Kickstarter stuff that's going on and all that stuff. So, and we were saying, like, because everybody was holding off and all that stuff, now there's so much more stuff to talk about. So that's kind of why we're doing this in many ways, because I want to help push you over that mountain. I want to give you an opportunity, and I want to remind people what this book is about. So what is this anthology about, and how did it come together, and what is it dealing with? Because I think certain people are going to see this and not know this project is out there. There's 300 to choose from. So
right, yeah. So Cthulhu Invades Oz, what makes it different and special? So the first thing I did was, unlike a normal anthology, I didn't have like a sign up, submit your story. I didn't do that. I literally picked the best people I knew in comics who I could get. So I asked them, hey, will you work with us? So I've got people from Scout, Mad Cave, Action Labs, Image, Aftershock, to name a few, even IDW. So I asked them all, hey, will you come on, sign on, do this project with me? A lot of them jumped on and said yes. So we started production of this about a year ago. And what makes it different from other anthologies, Cthulhu Invades Oz, that name kind of explains what it's about. Basically what happens is Cthulhu minions talk to Dorothy, and Dorothy accidentally sells out Oz, and they invade Oz. But what makes this unique compared to other anthologies is not just people telling stories. So most anthologies are like, we're going to talk about suicide, or we're going to talk about monsters, or we're going to talk about hope, or we're going to talk about LGBT, I didn't say it right, but you know what I mean. All those things. This is one continuous story. So it does have a beginning and an end. It's one narrative throughout the whole thing, which I think is really unique and really, really special.
Yeah, and let's talk about that, because I agree, and it's definitely Dorothy sort of sells out Oz. I don't think that ruins anything in Kansas. And
Yeah.
Dorothy's really not in the entire thing, which I actually like a lot, because I am sick of Dorothy in general. I actually like Oz as a whole. I like different interpretations of Oz. Fables has a version of Oz that I thought was great, where Dorothy's an assassin. I also like the fact that Zenescope has their version of Oz, and that's a whole different ballgame, and it's darker and more twisted and done the way Zenescope does things, and they have some of the best cover artists, in my opinion, doing Dorothy in a way that changes the definition of what
Well, I
Oz
mean,
should be.
even last month we had the OZ from David Pepos, which was I think it was $150,000 campaign with 1,000 backers. Like Oz is like a ripe, wonderful comic shared universe. People love it.
Even to talk about all that stuff and things of that, what is yes, this is and I just love Oz. So what like made you want to go down that path to talk about this and have that warmongering position and really build that out? Because the way this story gets told is that we sort of have a war going on where
All right.
Cthulhu and then we have different components of Oz basically being defended and conquered and not conquered and teaming up. And so it's really a great concept, and it's very much an original concept with that. And I love it. And so, like, how did that thought process come about? Because it's not something I would even think of going down the
Yeah.
H.P. Lovecraft aisle, but then also taking what that is and then reimagining it in many ways.
Well, I think that that's the key to what makes us special is most of those other examples that we talked about, they're reimagining what Oz is. Where I actually took the Frank Baum, stuff and made it continuity. So we are changing the characters, but because of the environment of Cthulhu invading, so we give the reason why it's different, right? If you, for instance, there's the Wild World of Oz, which is like a Wild West, story. It's great, but it's just told in a different environment. We are taking these characters that you love and value, and twisting them. What happens when they're in this scenario, right? What happens? Like the first time you see Scarecrow, he is stabbing somebody. It's aggressive, not something you'd ever see Scarecrow. How did he get there? And that's kind of the fun of unraveling this and allowing us to tell this. The other thing that I really liked when I talked to my creative team is, I have 52 creators on this. Of those 52 creators, one, maybe two will ever work for the big two, right? Will ever go to Marvel or DC. At best odds, only one or two of us will. We never get a chance to touch things we loved as a child. So this allows us to tell stories of characters that we grew up with, that we loved, and be able to tell them in a new, unique, very fun way. And the same thing with Lovecraft. We tell Lovecraft from a very interesting point of view. So when Cthulhu invades, he's nasty. He's like he is in the book. And as he invades Oz, he is infected by the Oz magic. And he becomes like an Oz character, a little silly. And we really played with that and had a lot of fun with it as we developed the story.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I really enjoy about this too is that it's all connected and it all builds on top of each other. But we do have a bunch of different teams in there, and
Right.
I love it where we have different art styles and we have different segments, and then it's also broken up with some poetry, which plays to what's going on, and that's almost its own parallel story where you could take out the complete graphic novel and just have those poetry segments in it and get a sense of what's going on and all that stuff. And so, how did that even come about? And like, what was the planning process for that? Because I think that's
Yeah.
people don't understand that typically with anthologies, you'll have maybe a local anthology of local artists in an area, and then they're doing different stories that are not connected. But this is all connected. So how did that planning go and putting it all together? And I know that Chuck probably helped with that as well, Chuck Pino.
Yeah. Chuck, of course, helped of it, but it was my brainchild to do that because I didn't. I wanted to work with my friends and not just go, oh, do what you do best. I really wanted to work with them and build something unique and special. And having to build that together and build this universe together that we've kind of created. The reason why we added that poetry is I really wanted the Lovecraft feel. So if you've ever read Cats of Uthar, or some of his writing is very poetic and just the way he speaks and writes. So I wanted to infuse that and get that feeling in there. And I wanted to take little breaks as we're building the narrative and building stuff. Some of the things that you didn't see because you've got a work copy is we're actually adding even some pieces. Like in the beginning, we're going to talk about why your characters that you may love, you may not like this interpretation, but understand we're at a war. So things that happen in a war, it changes people, it affects people, and what that looks like. And hopefully we'll get a chance to tell more stories, because this takes place in days of adventure. So each story is like a snapshot of the war and what's going on at that time. So it allowed us to tell this beautiful story, and I think the poems really added to that, bringing you down to, all right, here's what's going on, here's the narrative, let's keep going.
I think a really good analogy for people who are Gundam fans. There is the original Year One in Gundam, and then there's all
Right.
these side stories like War and Pocket or Thunderbolts, and then the OFMS team, and all that stuff takes place during the 1 year war. But then you also have the main series and those miniature series and the OVAs and the ONAs, which is original net animation, are sort of
Right.
snapshots of a much smaller world. And that's what I got out of this, is that we are seeing a war take place where Cthulhu is obviously wanting to conquer, take over Oz. He's getting affected by the magic, but he still has his goals. And then
Right.
seeing like a war room and all this stuff, and then different characters are doing different things. And so I love it. And now I want to talk about the stories because obviously we get a bunch of cool stuff that goes on. And one of
Right.
the things that I thoroughly enjoy is obviously Dorothy sells things out, and you have to write that. So, what was it like making Dorothy the bad guy?
So that was tough, right? So I an anthology, if you're in an anthology, as someone who's been in an anthology, you basically go, all right, where does my story, how good is it versus everybody else in the story? So you're kind of gauging, I just don't want to be the worst one. I just don't want to. So I wrote kind of the worst one, not because it's a bad story, because I think it's a great story, but it's a setup story, right? I don't get to tell any of the cool war stuff. I don't get to have really stuff. I just kind of show the plot and tell you what the plot's going to be, and tell a unique story in it, because I do think I get to tell a unique story in it. So yeah, I really dug getting into Dorothy and really getting into the character aspect of Dorothy. That's what I really liked about telling that story. In my story, Dorothy treats these Cthulhu monsters that come up to her like she does creatures of Oz. But Lovecraft's characters don't respond the way a character in Oz does, right? They don't view things the same way. Their goals and ambitions are not just to get better. They're not looking for a heart. They're not looking to conquer their fears. They're not looking for a brain. They're looking to take over your world and devour you.
Yeah, and I think that really though, in many ways, and one of the things I like about this story is that it captures what Dorothy feels, the innocence of Dorothy, very much like the original book does, and how
Right,
Dorothy's innocence is in there, and how Dorothy embraces Oz even if she's in Kansas. And,
right.
and this is something that kind of stays true to her character. And then we have the Lovecraft stuff, and I am not as familiar with Lovecraft as I am with Oz.
Sure.
I'm the first person to say that I'm familiar with elements of Lovecraft, but not as well and as well versed. But what I
Right,
got out of it and what I know about it is that, well, those characters aren't the nicest characters. They're mean. They're a little messed up in the head to
right.
some degree. And they also have their own objectives. And so I thought that the first story is extremely well written in the book. And I'm trying to not give away too much here
Sure.
because it's kind of sets up those two dichotomies in the world. And so what,
Right.
and that's something that I think is really relevant in this book, is that we have one world meeting another world, and then we have a fallout as they kind of mash into each other. And I
Right.
think it's super interesting how this entire thing played out in that realm. And I mean, there's stuff that we're going to talk about, and we're going to dive into the stories, and I think we're going to see that. And I think the best position to see that in is the Toto story,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
Toto is basically running away from Dorothy and makes Cthulhu his new master. If if Cthulhu becomes Toto's master,
Right. Yeah.
or yeah, that makes sense, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Toto, instead of being with Dorothy, hangs out with Cthulhu, because you're going to remember Toto just saw, going to the Dorothy story, her sell out everything. She's watching it, and these guys are, telling her what they're going to do, and she doesn't believe them. She's not questioning it. So he jumped ship, which I think is really interesting. One of the things I want to back up for the Dorothy story that you may not have known, The person the little girl who drew that was 14 years old. I did that on purpose. I chose a 14-year-old artist because Dorothy is 14 years old in the story.
That is very cool, and that I don't know what to say to that, because that is cool. It's also very cool that somebody is getting attention at that
Right,
age, and then also getting the ability to grind and get
right,
experience and get an opportunity to publish. Because that's something about an anthology that I think is, anthologies, in my opinion, are a little bit more forgiving on certain
right.
issues. Like, I don't think that broke down and For Their Bodies would be the same forgiveness, to
Correct.
put
Yeah,
it
yeah.
nicely in that regard. So, and you could correct me and yell at me for that. I'm totally willing to
No,
take
you're right.
responsibility.
Anthologies, can be whatever they are. I mean, we have a higher caliber of just because of our people that are in there. But even the one that you have, like she went back, she started seeing all the art, and she's like, there's a couple pages I want to do. So when you get your book, because I know you backed it, you're gonna actually see some of those Dorothy pages she redid recently because she was just like, I want to bring myself up, I want to bring up my A game. And a 14-year-old, the difference between a 14-year-old and like a 40-year-old doing it. A 40-year-old who tries to up their game doesn't look that much different. A 14-year-old who tries to up their game is completely different. Like, because she's still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I agree. And also, there's a lot more growth that a 14-year-old can have than a 40-year-old can have, in which that
Exactly.
40-year-old Frank Miller and 60-year-old Frank Miller is not a big jump. It's the same thing with my podcast, where I started my podcasting and my interview skill level, 5 years ago. I am not, the growth in those 5 years is so massive. And the next 5 years, not to, put myself down or anything, but that growth is going to be at best 10% versus 1,000%, just because at this stage the level of the gap is much smaller now to go up to the next level, and that growth is much smaller just because I know more shit now, for lack of a better
Right.
word.
Yeah.
But and also just I'm curious, because this is an anthology and it does read linear and we get snapshots and things do build upon each other. How much direction did all these people have, and what was the parameters and them telling and all that stuff? Because obviously this isn't your traditional anthology, and we're going to get back to talking about Pumpkinhead in a second here, because I like pumpkins, and we should have done this last month because it would have been perfect, but I digress.
Yeah. I mean, we did launch last month, but yeah, we're getting towards the end now. And it's my fault too, by the way. He asked me early on, "Hey, can I get you on?" And I was so busy trying to put everything together, I never got back. Not because I didn't want to be on the show, just I just got lost in the shuffle.
Legitimately,
Uh,
this happened 2 days ago when we set this
right.
entire thing up. I'm just making it perfectly clear on my end
Right.
too. So
But you did ask me before I launched, if I remember correctly, like when I was talking about it, doing the pre-hype.
I
Hey,
think
make
I
sure you
asked
get
you
me
2 days
on.
after you launched.
Right, yeah. You were like, hey, make sure you add me to your list. And I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. As I appeared on 20,000 shows. um, yeah, so the parameters were this. So again, I tried to ask a lot of pros. So a lot of them are pros, which I think is really interesting for you who's an interviewer and knows some of these guys because you're in the same circles. You know that when I asked them, none of these guys were doing the stuff that they're doing now. Like Jonathan Hendricks literally has his first scout book right now called The Recount that's doing gangbusters. It's on a lot of top tens lists. A lot of people are buying it. If I would have mentioned that name, a year ago, you would have been like, no. But because I'm in the industry, I know some secrets of what's coming down the pike of who they are, who they could possibly be, and taking some of those risks. So I think that that's really neat. And when you look at this list, you're like, wow, these people couldn't have been put together now, right? Because they're too busy doing other things. So I got them at right times. But the rules were, to answer your question, the rules were they could only have one character. If they wanted to interact with another character, they had to get permission of that other person. So I had Dorothy. So if someone wants to use Dorothy, they had to get my permission. Unless you're doing a flashback that refers to one of the novels. So if it was the first book or the second book. 3, we can only use novel continuity. You cannot use anything from the movies because I don't want to be sued. For instance, the ruby slippers are not allowed. I know you saw red slippers in there, but they're silver slippers in the book. Lion has to have like a hunch that makes him go down because he normally walks on all four. He doesn't have to walk on all four. There's many times where he stands up in in the books, but you've got to really focus on that. So little things like that we had to do. The other thing is the beginning and the end. Dorothy sold everyone out, so whether or not how anybody feels about that is whatever. And the ending was set in stone. You know, Russell's ending was set in stone with the Wicked Witch. But other than that, they had kind of free reign. I kind of gave them time zones. Here's what happens in the early times. This is the war in Emerald City, what that looks like. Here is the epilogue of what happens with that. So those are the kind of the preset, you know, timelines of what happens, and then everyone's kind of free to do what they wanted.
Yeah, and so pretty much people got to choose a bunch of characters and whatever they wanted to do. And I'm sure people claim certain things, and I'm sure you had certain people you wanted to do certain things, I would imagine.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'll be honest. It's not a secret. You know, obviously, the higher ranking you were, I gave you first dibs on what you picked. You know, like when I asked them, those are the bigger people. Like for instance, the Tin Man that's written by Jonathan Hendricks. That was supposed to be John Crother, who does a lot of the wrestling comics. He was a great get. He just got the heavy metal gig when I asked him. But Jonathan did such a great job on his part of the story. It was supposed to be a two-parter. That John Crother, being the gentleman that he is, was like, "Hey man, that guy's killing it. Let him do his thing." So he stepped away. We just got him back, and he's finishing up a story with Donnie Nguyen. He did the Black Lives Matter emblem that just happened. That's being had all of it. He was a Ringo nominee, so that he's doing that. So yeah, I mean, one of the stories that someone asked me in an interview, so I'll tell you. Like one of the first people we asked was Dirk Manning. Dirk Manning was supposed to be in this book. You know, Dirk Manning stuff, but there was some stuff that happened with Dirk Manning that we had to remove him from the book. But yeah, but at the end of the day, our the bigger you were, the more published work you had is basically you got first dibs on stuff. That's why you got Richard Rivera doing the Lion.
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk about there's pretty much five main characters in
Correct.
Oz that are the top five, and it's obviously Dorothy, the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, the Lion, and I would make the argument of Glinda in many ways
Right.
is kind of what people think, and obviously the Wicked Witch is sort of,
Yeah. Basically the movie main characters.
and so obviously Chuck did the Scarecrow.
Yeah, yeah. The Chuck did the Scarecrow. He really pushed big. He wanted he's like, I know you got bigger guys, but give me a shot. I got this idea. He pitched the idea. I really wanted his artist, Kyron. Kyron's a great artist. He never draws. He's a great artist, so I got him, and they got together and they're the only part one and part two in the whole thing, which I think is beautiful. They get a really good story that kind of presses out. Richard Rivera and Clay Means, they did the Lion, like we talked about. Richard Rivera is known for Stabby Bunny, which is a huge deal. Jonathan Hendricks, did the Tin Man.
So let's just talk about the Scarecrow, because I think one of the things that is so beautiful about the Scarecrow and the Lion we're going to talk about, as well as
Sure, yeah,
Tin
go ahead.
Man, is that the Scarecrow sort of has to challenge what I felt is his courage and muster up courage and go into new territory to sort of make a move in the war against Cthulhu, and we see this Scarecrow evolve into something new, and
Yeah,
obviously stabbing people, and you have a person who's made a straw, and really the courage and using his brain and kind of going, maybe not using his brain in many ways, but kind of going
right.
against what he was granted in the novels, and we see this new evolution. And it's so interesting because when I'm reading this, and I obviously have a work copy, I backed it. For those who think I don't support Kickstarters, that's changing. I want to clear that up in the air before I get yelled at anybody and doubting, and people call me a hypocrite. I backed it right
You
when you
back
asked live. I backed
it.
it live. So
Mhm.
clearly, that's where I stand, and you can find that live stream somewhere. But it's kind of cool to see the Scarecrow go primal a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what was cool about it? When you take the Scarecrow in the novels, he's the smartest man in Oz. So he ends up being at certain times in charge of Oz. Like he's never like fully in charge. He just gets certain times that he'll be in charge. So he looks at the Cthulhu things and realizes we're gonna lose. I don't know what. So he responds as someone who's desperate. So he's desperate for a way to win, and he goes into desperate measures, you know, on doing that, which I think is very, very interesting and very fascinating about, his progression, because he looks at this. This is not going to work out well for us. you know?
Yeah, it's that moment, and it's really, I think it's great that we get part one, and then you're
Right?
reading, and then I'm reading another thing, and then there's a part two, and I'm like, oh, we see more, and we
Right.
see some other things that are interesting. It's part two is a little bit darker than part one, and I think it's a nice touch. I think that we could have an entire book just on the scarecrows, entire interaction. If Chuck ever wants to do that and you're down for it, I think it could
Yeah, I'd be
be.
down for it. Yeah.
I think it could be something very special because it's kind of nice to see that character and see the scarecrow, which in many ways, I mean, fire and probably war is the greatest threat to him
Right.
versus every other character. And so obviously I just love the entire thing. And I think it's so interesting to redefine the odds and redefine expectations and take something and take a base of something and then transform it into something else, but still have that integrity of that Oz component to it, much like Wicked did in many ways.
Yeah, one of the things it's really cool, and I don't know if you noticed, because you're a Broke Down fan. Did you notice that he killed Randy in Denver?
I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, you'll
I
have to wait.
completely missed that. I'm the first person to admit it. I missed that completely.
Yeah, no, you're good to go. Like it was subtle, but if you know my work and you look at them, you're like, oh, that's Randy in Denver. Yeah, he murders, which was something they did without telling me. Of course, they're like, we're gonna murder your characters. Thanks for inviting me to the book.
And now I don't want to go and then ruin too much because we just gave an Easter egg away here. But we got to talk about the lion because obviously
Yeah.
Stabby Bunny, Richard Rivera, it's cool. I believe 1001 is a reference to Arabian Nights in many ways, and
Yeah, yeah,
that,
yeah.
I got that vibe from this one. This is my favorite component of the book, to be honest. And I think it's going to be a lot of people's. And I'm biased because I actually like Richard Rivera and I like Stabby Bunny from what I've read of it. And this is cool with the lion and the fox and how like that moment. And I don't want to ruin too much, but I'm going to ruin part of it where you have a mother fox basically saying that she ran away from her kids, and then you have the lion saying, "I couldn't even blame her." I mean that is touching. And if that doesn't cut through you, I don't know what will cut through you on that, where it's this idea of what is true fear. And we have the lion going up against pretty much Cthulhu and the minions, and it's this idea that what is true fear and what is facing that fear, and that's what I got out of it, and that's how
Yeah,
I
I mean,
interpreted it.
he's a different, this is the guy who's already conquered fear. And Cthulhu is based on a fear. What does that character look like? And how does he respond to basically the world saying, you should fear me, and the lion going, I've already conquered that. That's in my past. What are you gonna bring? And that's an epic battle, because Cthulhu's biggest weapon and what he's all about is causing fear, and this guy doesn't play that. And I think that's super interesting.
And
And the art for that is just so good. Claire Means, she did Shadow Play, which is a spin-off to uh, Stabby Bunny, and I mean it's just beautiful. It's such a beautiful piece.
and this thing just cuts right into it. I think this is one of the most powerful stories in this entire graphic novel and anthology
Right.
because I think it just hits it, and I think there are components of it, and I think the epic battle, it's done beautifully and it's written amazingly, but I think it's everything else that highlights that and makes that actually worth something. If that makes
Yeah.
any sense, like I'm a big comic fan. You're a lifelong comic fan, and
Right.
you and I have both read stories where the build up to those epic battles is, and it doesn't live up to it. And this, it's
Right.
like, oh, now I get why people are fighting because now we're dealing with this concept where it's like, oh, this is real and this is painful and there's something to actually fight for. And
Right.
nothing is misplaced in this entire short story. And I only wish it was longer. I really do, because I loved it.
Yeah, I think that that's what this beautiful thing did really well. What the pieces did is it showed what real war looks like, not comic book war, but real war. Right? The heroes, our heroes who are good together, that Dorothy gathered together, are scattered. They're all having to deal with Cthulhu on their own terms and their own ways. And the people who are fighting in the actual war are the Emerald City Guards or the Munchkins or the Wizard and the Wizards, troops. They're the ones who are fighting the front line, defending things because, Oz is in shambles and everything's scattered and everything's doing. And I think that that's what makes this work because it's not what you expect. Because you'd expect, oh, this is one narrative, so they're gonna get together, and that doesn't happen. Spoiler, it doesn't happen. And they still, things happen. Glenda has to deal with it her own way. Even the Wicked Witch has to deal with this reality her own way because it's all sprung on them so fast.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about the Wicked Witch because I love that and obviously I'm a Scotty Young fan, and Scotty Young didn't work on the book. I want to make that clear, but it's definitely Powerpuff Girl done, the Wicked Witch.
Yeah.
It's definitely Scotty Young done, that style and the art. Russell is a great writer in many ways, and I think he killed it with the end, and I think that it was a great pairing to do it in that style with his writing. I really give Russell credit for that. And so, and obviously you said that was the end and you defined the parameters. So what was that entire thing like, building that at the end and how she's dealing with it? And we get that cartoony aspect of it, but we also get a very serious situation where it's like there's a deal being struck about survival and some other stuff, and what are we going to do? And also the imminent threat of Cthulhu if it doesn't work, and maybe possibly a sequel, because a sequel can spin out of this. I'm just saying.
Yeah. There's several actually. We wrote this book, in different times of the war to do a sequel. We could do a sequel just in Oz, tell a completely different group of stories without breaking this continuity because we spaced it out that much and allowed that to happen. But when we talk about the Wicked Witch, so there is the Wicked Witch in the book who is in the first book and never really brought up. She's just mentioned in other books. She never returns. She never does anything big. But then we talk about every medium that's not that, where Wicked Witch is used and became this new character, right? From Wicked to the Tin Man to the Wonderful World of, the Wicked Witch is used in so many different aspects of Oz mythos that to not bring her back would have been a disservice. And we could have gone with the Gnome King. We don't mention the Gnome King. The Gnome King's not in here. For those who are really Oz fanatics and watch Return of the Oz, the Gnome King is literally the major villain. He's like the, I can't think of the villain from Lord of the Rings. Saruman?
I think so. Saruman. Christopher Lee, I think.
Yeah. Saruman, yeah. He's like that villain. He's 4 books, they're trying to beat the Gnome King. The Gnome King is the big nemesis. He's the Magneto to the X-Men. He's the Doctor Doom the Fantastic. That's the Gnome King. It's not the Wicked Witch. Just, most of us have just seen the Wicked Witch, but we don't bring up the Gnome King at all. So we needed the Wicked Witch there. Russell, I didn't ask him to be part of this story. He found out about it, even though this was supposed to be secret, because, we talk. And he was like, I need to write this. Can I write Glenda? I was like, Glenda's taken. Jamie Premack, who is fantastic, did the whole art herself in like a charcoal thing. Very unique art style. Can I get Glenda? No. All right, I guess, I don't know who to use. I mean, I'm sure the Wicked Witch is taken. I was like, nope, nobody's got the Wicked Witch. He's like, what? Literally in 2 days gave me a script, and I read it, and I was like, that's my ending. That's my ending. That's it right there. And I was like, so that from that on in, I was like, all right, guys, this is the ending. Here's the beginning. Let's do it, because I really feel it gives hope and desperation, which is exactly what we're trying for, right? Like, it gives you the hope that you want, but it also gives you the desperation that the rest of the book gave you.
So
to not spoil anything.
So what was it like that then Russell jumped on board? Because Russell is great at what he does. Obviously, he is well-versed in Cthulhu. I don't know if he's well-versed in Oz, but I know he's very well-versed in Cthulhu. And having somebody who obviously loves Cthulhu, because I don't know how many people on this project are like super versed in Cthulhu, but I know Russell is. And then having him, do the Wicked Witch and all that stuff, and then the art and pairing up and finding the right artist for this, because it could have went grimmer, it could have went realistic, it could have went surrealistic, but it went a certain way that definitely creates a really cool ending. And I think this definitely helps to make the book where it stands when you read it from start to finish in one shot.
Yeah, I mean, as we talked about it earlier, we have this whimsical, beautiful definition of Dorothy and who she is and what Oz means to her. On the same flip coin of that, at the ending of the book, we have the Wicked Witch. And from day one, and I don't care if you just seen the movie or read the books, she has a very different definition of what Oz is. Oz is not this great place. Her sisters betrayed her. Like she is lesser. Oz is not this magical place, and everybody's, she's the one who exposes the wizard. She knew that the wizard was bad. That the wizard wasn't all the things he pretended to be. I think that is two sides of a coin and really, really gives a proper ending to this book. And she is told in such a good way, the way she's told things, the way she immediately comes onto the scene and takes over. The greatest thing about the Wicked Witch, when you look at the MGM movie, when she's on the screen, she takes over the scene. She takes it, from everybody. And not just because of her evil laugh, just like she's a powerhouse, what she's saying. And she's never wrong. Like, you killed my sister with your house and you stole her shoes. Like, you were in the wrong. I don't care what Glenda says to you.
I think the actress also during that movie,
oh yeah, totally
was sacrificed a good amount of things for that movie to make it work. So that's a different discussion for a different day. But yeah. I agree that in many ways that the Wicked Witch is front and center in that movie, and I think the ending is perfect. And I think just the interactions between Cthulhu and her, it's such good dialogue. And it's so good, and it's so good where I don't want to say it's playful, but it's definitely, you don't feel the conversation is as serious as with others, but you still feel there's real threats behind it.
Right. And again, speaking to your point, it's because he knows Cthulhu so well that he can write a conversation between, because Cthulhu doesn't really talk to anybody in the book. He talks in that scene, and then there's an epilogue that's after the Wicked Witch scene. But beyond that, he doesn't really do a lot of talking. He does a lot of killing, but not a lot of talking. And I think that Russell really captured what is Cthulhu's motivation, and how can that be used in the intelligence of the Wicked Witch? Because again, though she wants to take over Oz, she wants to take it over to make it better, much like a Magneto or Dr. Doom. It's not, it's not your normal objectives. So,
yeah, and then the final big character I want to talk about, because we skipped a little bit ahead with the Wicked Witch, because you brought it up, which I'm totally thrilled because I love it. I love the ending also as much as I love the line. But the Tin Man was fascinating in many ways, where obviously he's going after his heart, and so his heart is gone to sort of ruin things a little bit for everybody. And Cthulhu, or a Cthulhu-esque creature, has it, and he has to get it back, and he's on a ship, and basically he's throwing his men into shark-infested waters to attract this gigantic lizard Cthulhu creature to get his heart back. And so it's kind of a very dark and odd twist on the Tin Man, and how that all works. And then the ending is very, very disturbing and shocking. But you also get a sense of victory, but you get a sense of the cost might have been a little too high in reality, and really fucking dark. And I know a little bit of Jonathan Hendrick's work, but that is dark. just to put it nicely. I'm trying to avoid spoilers as much as I can, because I think when people read it, they're like, oh,
Yeah, I think Jonathan Hendricks has got a really good career coming ahead of him. I think this recount is, I mean, just think of how smart he is. He has a book that's coming out in the middle of a crazy election called The Recount. Like how smart, and that was planned. Like he planned to have it on election. Yes, he didn't know that our world was going to be as crazy, but I think everyone knew that we were going to trust this election based off of the last 4 years, right? Like regardless of what have happened, like there was going to be some sort of
There's
controversy.
a term.
Um,
I'm gonna drop a creator's name that should be coined. Matt Hawkins smart in comics,
yeah,
where
yeah,
Matt Hawkins has written things that so you say, oh, that's happened. And if you look at
right.
Samaritan, you look at the 2016 and 2020 election, and I think Jonathan Hendricks is in that position where I want to coin the term Matt Hawkins comic smart. Something to that effect because that's how good Matt Hawkins is, and that's how good Jonathan Hendricks is, probably, and it's going to become.
Yeah. I mean, we had it's something similar. Like JMS predicted the pandemic. He talked about that in his book in the AWA. But Jonathan Hendricks is really smart. So this book, you know, I'm calling it. It's kind of based off of Moby Dick, right? So you've got the Tin Man, being Captain Aram and going against a big monster and what that looks like, but with all the limitations of the Tin Man being on the sea with salt water and with people like. So it is dark, it is gritty, but it is super fun. But some of the art, like the beautiful art, and it's on the Kickstarter. The art of him and the axe trying to kill Cthulhu is amazing. It's a beautiful piece.
Yeah, it's a good one, and oh, it's so beautiful, and just the ending scene on it, and we're not talking about it for a reason
Yeah.
because it is just so good where you feel victory but you feel loss, and I can't say anything else about it because it's so good, and you get a real mixed feelings about the Tin Man, and so you get mixed feelings. I think is a good way to put it.
Right.
And,
Well, and I mean, one of the things I think we did really well is we put even on our side characters like Jack the Pumpkinhead, which I know you want to talk about in TikTok. Like those are high profile writers. David Byrne, creator of Stake, also is a co-publisher of Scout Comics. With Brian Silverback on that, and then we've got David Galliano and Stoney Williams, both Mad Cave creators, doing some cool stuff with TikTok. You know, I think that we did really good. And those characters, though they're lesser, they are the ones that you always see when you see someone beyond the five cast that we talked about, right? And I think they did really
yeah.
well.
I really think that the Pumpkinhead was great. I think it was well done, and I enjoyed it, and all that stuff that was involved in that. And I don't know as much about Pumpkinhead, and I had to do a little research on Pumpkinhead, which is fine, because
Right.
but I thought really cool, really fun, interesting. This idea of what's going on with him, and I don't want to ruin too much about it. And then I also thought TikTok was just so selfless in many ways, and talks about you know going down a certain path for the betterment
Right.
and making a conscious choice, but also staying true to what you're supposed to do. And
Right.
it's a great ending, and it's a great capturing of if you want to write a comic about sacrifice, that TikTok bit is perfect for it of self-sacrificing in so many ways, and it's so beautifully and just like the last like narrative bubble on that thing. Oh, that just hit home. That just hits home.
Well,
It's so beautiful.
yeah, what I love about the TikTok, it's like the New Warriors to the Avengers, right? Everybody else is the Avengers, but all the extra characters who you know a little bit about, maybe you saw Return of the Oz, or maybe you saw The Wiz, or you've heard about these characters, or you've seen these pictures. Basically, David grabbed them all and made a little story of like a little B team or Suicide Squad, like to handle like a mission out in the Rose Kingdom, which is really good. Jack the Pumpkinhead, what I love about it is Jack's the what he did with that story is he got the essence of an Oz character. It's a great reflection of the Dorothy. So it happens very early in the invasion, and he treats them much like Dorothy does. He's like, "Hello, how are you, Cthulhu cultist? What are you doing?" You know, and you know it changes. We see what's going to come as these characters are facing. I think the Jack Pumpkinhead story is almost one of the most important stories in the book because we don't see the transition for Scarecrow or Lion or Scarecrow or Tin Man or even the Wicked Witch or Glenn. We don't see a lot of the transitions, but you do see it in Jack, so you kind of get what could have happened to
Yeah.
some of these characters.
And I also think the placement of that story is super important as well
Yeah,
because once we see, and this is just my view on it, once we see one transformation, we don't need to see the Tin Man's transformation. We don't need to see the Scarecrow's transformation. We don't need to see, the Lion's transformation because we can imagine it with Jack's character and we can feel it. And we only need to see that transformation and that change once. But it's also nice to see it from a character who's going from innocence, and I know this is cliche what I'm about to say, going from
sure.
innocence to becoming uninnocent, to becoming aware of the war and aware that things have now changed and they're not
Right.
going back. And it's nice to see that, and it's nice to have that in the book. I don't know if Jack's story is the second or the third story, but it's very early on.
It's very early. I think it's the third story. Yeah.
And so immediately it also changes the way you read the book because you're not just thrown now into something. Obviously we got the sellout, and then we got another story, and then we got this. So it's cool in that regard. And I mean, we could legitimately talk about every single creator. I know Rob Anderson did a bunch of stuff in all this, and I thought that story was great. And then there's so many people, the worker bees, but I'm terrified of bees, so I kind of skipped that part. That's a different
Sure.
discussion. Very, very, very terrified.
Well, even though
Bees.
my favorite is the Wizard. The Wizard is one of my favorite stories in the whole thing because the guy who wrote that is Greg Elises. We switched the character of the Wizard. The Wizard's the only we switched it to a black character instead of the white like in the movie, which I don't think they really identify in the book. So I guess it doesn't really matter. Um, but it turns it to Game of Thrones, right? It takes the Wizard of Oz and goes, this can be Game of Thrones. And here's what Game of Thrones looks like in the Wizard of Oz narrative versus Cthulhu. And I thought that was genius. And it shows what makes Wizard of Oz characters timeless. They fit in any genre, in any field, and can go in any directions because they were written so well. That's why they stand the test of time.
Yeah, and I mean, we could legitimately dissect this, but I don't want to because I want people to buy your fucking book. Like,
Right?
I want
Buy
people to
it.
buy the book. Like, the whole thing about this entire conversation is that if you like The Wizard of Oz and you don't know anything about Cthulhu, this book is so interesting because the way I viewed it is that Cthulhu's just the common enemy.
Right?
It has, and obviously, I mean, you like Cthulhu and H.P. Lovecraft, but you could take and you could have. I don't want to say you could have put anything in there, but Cthulhu's just the common enemy, and now that common enemy or subsects of that common enemy are now taking over parts of this
Right.
kingdom and this world and these lands and these characters. And obviously, some characters are adapting better than others, and that's kind of the story behind this. And then it gets really interesting because I don't think this is about Cthulhu in many ways. It's about how all these characters are reacting in the Oz world that we know as X. What do they do when they're confronted with a major conflict of something that is just as powerful, if not more powerful than they are? And where do they stand and what choices do they make? And it's really interesting when we get characters that we know, like the Scarecrow. What choice does he make? The Tin Man makes a variety of choices. What choices does the Tin Man make? Dorothy made a big choice
Right.
that has consequences, and I want to know more of what happens, and because she doesn't really suffer any consequences from this entire thing, and so I want to know what is Dorothy's cross to bear, for lack of a better word.
Right. Sure.
And so I just love all of this, and I think it's so interesting when we go down this question because this is like a what if situation, and you're telling that story, but you're not just telling it Travis Gibb and one artist or two artists. You got a team of 52 people, if I'm not mistaken, telling 25 or 20 stories. Super
Yeah,
interesting.
it's 17 stories is what it ends up being.
I was close enough. I can't count. I'm a liberal arts.
Well, I mean, you could be right. The bees ones are individual stories, and you skip them. So maybe if you factor them as all individual stories, yeah.
Hey, I'm terrified of bees. Give me a
I
break.
get you. I get you.
They're scary. They're very
They are scary.
scary. If you get stung by a bee and it's scary, and I will purposely avoid bees and I will walk miles out of my way on my crutches because I can't walk to avoid bees. Clearly, the greatest state in America is Hawaii. They have no bees. I
So
refuse to
the
deal
bees
with it.
disappearing is not a concern to you. You're like, that's fine. No, no problem.
I will
Honey's not
happily
that
give
great
up
anyways.
honey. I will happily give up honey to get rid of bees. I'm going to be perfectly clear on that point. But again, this is not what the podcast is about. So, and then there's also the poetry stuff, and that's great, and that just flows super in. And I think that's another nice feature, getting away from the bees issues before we
Right.
lose Honey and we lose half my audience. So, but the poetry I thought was also really nice in between each of the stories because it kind of sets up a mood, it sets up the war, it also sort of keeps us on track a little bit. And so, how did that idea come into play? Because it's kind of nice to have an element of prose in there, but not overkill.
Yeah.
Because one of the books that I like the concept of it, it was, I think, AD After Death by Scott Snyder and Jeff Lemire.
Right.
And I didn't, I thought the prose were a bit of a cop out on that book that they threw out there. I thought the concept was brilliant. I just thought the prose was a cop out when you have 4 pages of prose and then you have 15 pages of comic and you have 4 pages of prose. It kind of defeats the purpose of reading a comic book. And with
Yeah,
this,
it's like they didn't want to buy the art. I get you.
so,
Right? You didn't want to buy the art for these pros. So you did a pro instead of doing the art. I get it. You wanted to be cheap. The poems in here are kind of a palate cleanser, right? We do some dark things, we go some different. So the poems kind of bring you a palate. Here is the tone that we want this book to have. Tonality was super important to me as a mastermind of this. And I don't think a lot of people think about anthologies as how the tone's supposed to fit, but I really did. So we wanted the tone to stay the same way, and the way to do that was add some poetry and add one letterer did 99% of the stories. There's one team just needed their own letterer for whatever reason, but the rest of them were all done by one guy, and that's again to fit a tone and familiarity. Even though you get all these different art styles and all this stuff, the poems help also like resonate. Like, hey, we need this tone cleanser to make sure you're good. And I grabbed one of the greatest poets I know. David Gressel's very, very talented. He's got a ton of followers on Instagram. He's very well known. He's done several published poetry works. He's always doing poetry, and I think he was a good fit to mesh with us comic creators. And he loves comics. He's a guy who I talk about comics with on a regular basis. So he gets and loves comics and gets poetry that a comic reader would want to read, not poetry that is written to spark, a virgin trying to blossom, I guess is a weird way of saying that.
no, I think people get it, and I agree. And I also viewed it just sort of keeping the reader on track of the lineage as well, and in
Right.
that realm, because I read it and I mean I followed where it was going. It wasn't that hard, but it was also nice to have that, you know, I guess poem that sort of kept us on track and set us up and brought out the story and made sure that we're still in line or that we
Right.
don't get too far out of line on certain elements. And so
Right.
that's how I viewed the poems, is as almost like a guardrail for the
Yeah, 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 absolutely. It definitely again, I've read anthologies. I don't know if you've ever, if you've read a lot of anthologies. A lot of them are harsh transitions into the next story. I don't want that. I want you to enjoy reading this book and not go, all right, this story sucks. Let's go to the next one. I want you to have that palate cleanser. This is important. Let's tell this story. Let's get you into it. Because you're not going to like every story. It's just not possible when you have that many stories of different writing styles. Even me, there's certain writers, when they write certain ways, I don't like them. Kirkman's great. I love all of his stuff, but you get that die, zero interest. The way he writes it, the way he does things. I believe he's an amazing writer. I just don't like that style when he decides to write in that. And I wanted that for everybody, you know?
Yeah, I agree on which that sometimes things don't click, and also it's anthologies can be weird where I've read anthologies that are beautifully done. Hungry Ghosts is one of my favorite books by Anthony Bourdain, and it's
Right.
somewhat of an anthology where he wrote and his writing partner wrote it together, but they had a bunch of different artists doing it. And so the anthology flows because they set up the anthology almost as, 100 candles type of game.
Right.
And it's a really brilliant framework in many ways because it allows for a lot of playing. And I think in many ways this book is set up that way too, where we have pretty much a framework and then everything plays within the framework nicely. And so
Yeah.
I think it was a smart move in many ways to set up the book that way.
Well, thank you, thank you. Yeah, I'm pretty proud of it. I'm pretty proud of the way they came out. I'm pretty proud of, our cover. Everything has a story from each cover to everything. That's what's great about it. And everyone's invested in it. You've seen the team. Our team is out there pushing. Gail Simone just retweeted us. We just signed David Pepos to do the forward. We're people are really investing in this idea. And we just need a little bit more to get us over the hump.
So,
Even if a
so,
dollar or share could mean the world to us.
so yeah, so let's talk about that. And obviously, there's a lot of rewards, and you could get this digitally pretty cheaply. I think it's $12 digitally.
Yeah,
And then there's the $20 pack digitally, which is pretty much everything that you've done for the most part up to this point.
correct. Yeah, yeah. All my orange cone stuff. Yep.
And then let's jump up into some other stuff that I think is more interesting. So obviously there's the Orange Cone exclusive soft cover with audio with plus digital version and some audio commentary stuff, and then there's a few other covers, and there's a deluxe pack, and then there's a signed book I think that's still available.
Yeah, I could run it really quick and just kind of explain it. So there's the standard version that's $29, and then there's various of that. You can get a print, you can get it signed, whatever you want. And signed is from multiple creators, not just one person. It's at least five. I'm actually expecting closer to 10. Um, but it starts at 29, runs to like $50. And what it is and why it's exclusive is only people back on the Kickstarter are getting that, or if you buy it at a con from one of the creators. What it is, it's a cover and it's embossed. So like you'll be able to feel it, it'll have like raised characters. It'll be really, really nice. Then we have a direct market cover that's for retailers. So only retailers can get that. The third is a hardcover. So we have a hardcover that's all bound. That starts at 50, goes up to, 100, depending on what you get and how it's up. But that one's hand painted and it's done on canvases of the Cthulhu book, which is really cool. But some of the couple of special things that I want to highlight as well is we have a pack. If you're into indie comics or just trying to, you're a fan of definitely this show, there's a $47 pack, which is great. So you get the book and you get 3 indie comics that are signed, sent to you from any of the creative teams. And as I tell you, they're all from Scout, SourcePoint, Mad Cave. So you're not getting junk comics. You're getting high quality, rare comics that to add to your collection. And then we also have a Christmas pack. If you want to buy this for a family member, because it may not be your thing, you may not like Oz, you may not go to Cthulhu, we're going to send that family member a card, a beautiful, put together, funny parody card to that family member and send it to them and let them know the book is coming with the digital copy. Like we'll give them the digital copy so they'll get that now, and then the hardcover will happen in like February. And the only reason, and again, because you've backed my stuff before, I always ship really early and really fast, like normally within the next 30 days. The only reason why this is done, I've never done a trade before. I'm a little nervous, so I'm going to get a proof to look at it to make sure it's perfect before I ship it to you. And that's just, because I've never done it before. That's the only reason why it's taking so long. Which on Kickstarter, by the way, 3 months is nothing. But for me, it is something. Normally I'm the next month.
Yeah. I was going to ask about that because you do a lot of single issues, or you
Right.
do an issue or two, and obviously those are comic stuff, and
Right.
then you do a bunch of variants, and so this is new territory for you. And so, what is that like to enter a new territory? Because you are a publisher in many ways.
right?
Cone is its own thing, and I don't know if this is under Orange Cone to some degree.
Yeah, this is an Orange Cone product. Yeah, yeah. Um,
But yeah, just to talk about that because it's kind of really important in evolution, especially during COVID. I've
right.
evolved, a bunch of other people are evolving, and I'm a strong believer that if you're not evolving in the middle of COVID, then you're gonna be when everything goes back to normal. Nothing's going back to normal per se to the same degree that it was before. And
Yeah.
so, what is that like? Because this is very much a change in how things are going to be done, and it opens up a lot more doors for you in many ways.
Sure. So when you're talking like, so my last project that we talked about was Voodoo Nations. That had 15 covers, from store exclusives to what you could get on the package, because that's what the market likes. The market likes variety. It likes rare people doing covers. They want, chrome. They want metal. They want, holograph. They want all these special
UV light
things.
is a big one now.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. In fact, my next one for Voodoo Nations, spoiler, I'll say it here, is going to be glow in the dark. I've got some glow in the dark ink. It's going to be really dope. Anyways, um, to, they want all these special things. You can't do that with a trade. Nobody cares, right? Nobody, they just want to trade for their stuff. Now, there is, a hardcover. People do want a hardcover version and a softcover version because those are two different markets, but I can't do what's easy for me, right? I can't just create another cover, put a higher price tag on it, and call it a day. I can't do that because that's not the way it works. No one wants three trade paperbacks. And, the extra value, before we got on air, we were talking about CGC. I was showing in my 9.9. You can't CGC this book, right? They can't do graphic novels. So I have to find a different way to make it valuable to you, different ways to make this package valuable than just targeting the collector's market. Because the easiest way to raise money on Kickstarter, hit that collector's market as hard as you can with as many variants as you can, and that's how you raise your money. That's
especially
not the
with
way this is.
especially with cool artists. We
Yeah,
were
yeah,
speaking
yeah, absolutely.
before.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, we were speaking before about variants, and I mentioned Sun Kumanaki, and I've interviewed Ebas on my show, and people love Sun, people love Ebas, people love Jamie Tyndall. People
Right?
buy that stuff up because they really like that. People like Mike DeBaffo, and obviously I'm mentioning a bunch of Zenescope artists, but people really like those people's artwork, and they like the exclusivity to it. And so that's something that's very interesting with this, where there is that there is parts of this that are exclusive, like a signed copy by at least
Sure.
five people.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's some stuff that make it special, but it's not like, again, it's not like a normal Kickstarter for me. So I had to learn basically direct market. What does direct market look like? How can I make it enticing to the direct market event, and how can they invest? It went from, I don't need, on a normal broke down or Voodoo Nations, I need 150 backers to buy the most expensive thing, and I'm good. Like, to fund, I'm not worried about the rest. Everything else beyond that is gravy. Where this, I have to sell as many people as I can, various products, and make it special and unique. That's why we added things like audio commentary, the sign signatures. That's why there's a lot of different things that we added to give you some exclusivity. But the books themselves, there's three versions, and there's only going to be three versions. If I added, I could grab pages or have someone do a new cover. In fact, someone sent a great cover to me today. It's not going to be, because they're trades, there's not a lot of resale value for that. So the real collector, like someone like yourself, you look at that and go, that's really cool.
Yeah,
I may buy it because I want to collect it, but there's no
I
resale
mean, I'm
value,
I'm only
which is
buying. I'll be the first person to say this. I'm only buying this because I want to read it. I I,
right,
I have no desire. Like I don't find value in this as a commodity the same way I find it as a CGC book. And that's not no knock at you. Like I have
right, no,
copies of Broke Down that I find that are really cool, like that 100 bullets variant. And I think I
right.
can say that on the air that it's referencing that. You know, so I think that's perfectly fine to say. And if it's not, well, Vertigo can sue me. But anyhow, the point is that I find value in that because it's a single issue. I do not find value as a commodity. I just want to read the book. and I want to
Right.
enjoy it, which is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that from an investor position. Is that's why I'm backing this book. I think it's interesting. Also, I want to support you, and that's part of it as well in that
Sure.
regard. And so, because you've been very nice to me in all of this, so obviously I want to return the favor. But yeah, I think that this is very different because I don't think anybody's going to be like in 10 years from now. I have a copy of Cthulhu Invades Oz and it's worth $600. I don't think it's going to be on that trajectory. And so,
Yeah, I mean, even Sandman trades, which are valuable. Like the original Sandman trade only really has about a $30 increase in value. So it's like a $60 book versus a $20 book. That's not a good investment, like for a collector, versus me selling you a rare cover that, for instance, is 9.9 that's Stan. Even though no one knows this book, Staniak 9.9, it's already at $60 to $100 value without knowing a lot about it, which is great. That's what collectors are all about. And then if it does hit, or if Stan does do something better, it gets higher and higher and higher. These guys can do as much as they want. It doesn't increase this value. Just the rarity of it, if it can't, because it can't be published or this and that later, is where the difference is.
yeah, and I agree. And so even to talk, because we were talking at the front of the hour of this, and obviously you're $3,000 off, and obviously you said that you think you're going to fund, and I think you will. But obviously Kickstarter has been very very crazy this year.
Yeah.
All these celebrities coming in, also the fact that everybody's been holding off with it, and now everybody's trying to get a project off the ground. I know people who have delayed; they were supposed to launch in November, now they're launching in December. I know a variety of other things that are going on with all that, and things are kind of crazy with that. Minus Chuck Pino, because Chuck is insane with his 67th
Right.
Kickstarter project this year. 67 guys. I don't know if he actually did 67, but that's the number I think Steph Wilson's using. So we're going to go with that. But I think it's crazy because obviously Russell has spoken about this. I think Russell's number was like 267, and now you said it's like 300 from this year versus last year. And
Yeah, so it was
so
147 last year, and now it's 307 is what the current number is.
so it's pretty crazy. I, as a consumer, I'm backing one Kickstarter a month. So you're my November. Um, Chuck was my October. You're my November, and Corey Hardyman is my December for Sister Mercy, which I'm stoked for because I'm actually very excited for that book. But and that's in probably about I think like a week or two. It's December 2nd or 3rd, and I'm actually very excited for that book to come out because I love Sister Mercy. But that's neither here nor there. Um,
Right.
so what is this like with all the competition and all that stuff and everything going on? Because obviously Kickstarter has massively changed with everything that we said. I think we spoke about it prior, and I don't want to rehash what we spoke about the last round per se.
Yeah. So it's a different world, right? I have an advantage because I've been doing this a long time, but I mean these new guys are struggling. They're not making, a lot of them aren't funding as much, which is really scary
Also,
because
the big guys aren't making as much as they think.
right, and us bigger. So it hits the guys at the top and the guys at the bottom, right? This book with the creators on it and stuff should have been easily funded. And I'm not trying to say that as a slack, but we had Nightmare Theater on, which had Charlie Stickney, David Pepos, Clay Adams, and a couple other people really, really big. That was going on. We had, obviously we always have a Lady Death to compete with. That's once a month.
Elvira's thing was
You got
up. Elvira
what's up?
thing was up.
The
Elvira.
Elvira thing was up in the beginning of this month. The David Sims Spawn reprint for the Spawn 9. So we've got all these big competitors are dragging stuff. And then all of the creators are putting this stuff. Comics Tribe is a big guy. Comics Tribe always funds in days, from Sync to Wailing Blade to all their stuff. Wailing Blade still isn't funded, and it's got 2 days left. That never happened to Comics Tribe. He normally funds heavy.
He's great. He's got the best copywriting in the game.
Yeah, he's great. He's an amazing guy, and he's gonna fund. Like he knows he's gonna fund, but to not do gangbusters like he does is really really crazy. And then, uh, what's really great about it is some people are getting really high numbers, like a Chuck. Chuck did really good because he knows the game, so his numbers are higher than they used to be for an issue 2. We just have Caleb for Unicorns versus Vampires that just funded. That funded at $9,000.
But
His last
to
Kickstarter
talk about
failed.
Chuck has been very public. He didn't know. He thought he was going to fund. He didn't know he was going to do as well as he thought.
Yeah,
And he's been very honest. And Chuck was on with Sean, was on for Belial,
yeah.
and I know Chuck didn't know if he was going to reach what he was going to reach, and so and he knew he was going to fund, but he didn't think he was going to do much over what he was asking.
Yeah, no, we talk about numbers and what they look like, and we make predictions, and I put him at 47, and he was at 55. That's a huge wrong. And just so you know, prior to right now, I'm not wrong very often. My numbers are pretty accurate. I can normally tell what someone's
Yeah,
going to bring in, but the dude hustled. And what I'm saying is, Chuck had to work really hard to get that. He was on shows every night. Same thing with me for 30,000.
he
I'm
was
on
on. He was on.
shows.
He left the show to be on my show.
Right.
So
Yeah.
just to put that in perspective.
I'm on 2 more shows after this. I'm one at 8 and one at 11 o'clock tonight. Tomorrow I've got the same thing. Like, we are having to work really hard, and that's not sustainable. Just so you know, that's not sustainable for anybody, from Chuck to anybody, because
I know the
all it
feeling.
takes,
I know the feeling.
yeah,
I'm with you in the fight.
one crisis, we're done. Right, one crisis, we're not going to fund, puts our whole world behind. But luckily, we have great families that stick by us and believe in us, and we have great fans like you who are like, Travis, I see that you're not quite there yet. You're normally there. Can I help? Which is such a blessing to do. So and anybody who sees this, I've done the work, man. I've done several books on Kickstarter. This is my 7th on the Orange Cone. I get you your books. I get your stuff. Andrew read the book. You're not going to get your book. There's a lot of people who scam you. You're getting your book.
Travis
It's
is just
done.
taking your
It's
money,
ready.
guys. I'm telling you right now. No, no, I'm kidding. I'm
Yeah.
kidding. Everybody's got a scamming Kickstarter story. I've been, the victim of one, and it actually forced me to leave Kickstarter and not back one for about a year and a half because I was
Right.
pissed, and people still haven't gotten their book from this guy. And I'm not going to mention who it is because I don't want to give any credibility or anything like that. But people are still pissed about it in the community. But Travis will get you your books. I can tell you that I am expecting to get certain books from my second Kickstarter. Should be arriving in the next few weeks. Belial's coming out in April, I believe,
Right.
and your book should be out in February.
Right.
And so
And
the
I
book
won't
is
go live again until it's done. Like, you're not going to see another book. Like, Broke Down is done. It's ready to go. It's ready to be stuff. I'm not going to give you Broke Down or sell it to fans until this is done. I have responsibility to all 436 backers right now, which I think will be closer to 500 before we're done, to get this book out. That's my responsibility. So I really get upset with the ones who are continuing to put new stuff out,
with
even though
the
they haven't fulfilled.
exception. There's exceptions.
Sure.
There's maybe like 30 people who are the exception to the rule, like a Chuck Dixon,
Right.
or
Well, and
even
sometimes it's not their fault. Like, they're the writer of something,
yeah,
not,
like
but if I'm the publisher,
Chuck. He has his hands in every single pie.
right.
But for the most part, the rule applies. The rule applies to most people where you should get your book done, get it out the door, and then work on your next one. And that's
Right,
what you do
exactly.
in many ways. And so my mom's gonna shoot me. She's been a saint. She's visiting me, everybody, and she's
Hi,
gonna.
Mom.
She could hear you, but she's smart enough to remain quiet during this interview. She's also in her pajamas, so I don't want to embarrass her too much. And I'm sure she was listening to a good chunk of this, so I do want to give you an opportunity to promote yourself. I don't think we need to rehash COVID. It's enough said about COVID between my last 2 interviews this week, and I'm sure that things really haven't changed all that much from our last interview, unless they have. You tell me.
Yeah. Again, just hustling, trying to get this funded. This is the most important thing. I'm known for Voodoo Nations. Yes, I'm known for Broke Down. Both great books. Hopefully, you enjoyed both of them. We did really well, but this is my focus right now. This is what I want to do. And I have some of the best people in the business. So you're interested in figuring out who you should back in the future and who you should back in the comic stores. Buy this book, read their stories, look up who they are, because these are some of the up and coming names. You're going to see them early.
And so obviously I want to give you the opportunity to promote yourself and promote where can people find the Kickstarter. Obviously
Right.
you're 3,000 pretty much short is where you're at right now. From this, we got 5 days. Everybody definitely going to be pushing it out on my end, this interview, in the next few days. Where can people find the Kickstarter? And even going beyond the Kickstarter, where can people find Broken Down? Where can people find Voodoo
Right.
Nation? I
Yeah.
don't know what else you have exactly off the top of my head, but I think you got a few other things. And also,
Yeah,
can people
we have other
back?
things, but the major thing is CthulhuInvades.com. That'll get you to the Kickstarter, so you don't have to search for it. CthulhuInvades.com. That's where you find the Kickstarter. We got 5 days left to get that. You can find Broke Down in Four Dead Bodies at brokedownin4deadbodies.com. You can find Voodoo Nations at voodoonations.com, which is really easy. So if you can remember any of the titles, you'll find them. You can find me at Travis Gibb at Facebook. You can find me on Instagram at Jesterlou, Jesterlou. And pretty much anywhere. I'm doing this tour and keep doing the stuff and keep selling the book.
Yeah, and then I'm just going to add something to all that. Support indie comics. It's super, super important right now. Supporting indie comics, also supporting people who continuously do good work in indie comics. One of the things, and it's not necessarily comic related, but I think it's super important and it relates to comics, is that it's hard to find people you trust. It's hard to find people who are really good at their job and continuously delivering very well and are very responsive. And there's a lot of people who are not responsive and are not good. And that if you're new to Kickstarter and you haven't backed a project, backing somebody who's done this a lot is a good way to start. And if you like their work and you're interested and you like what they're doing and you got the money, you could back at a very small level. And then the next round, you could back at a bigger level. So you could legitimately get the digital copy for $12 and say,
Right.
hey, I could take a $12 risk. But again, and I'm gonna been saying this all week, been saying it in the last, I think, 84 interviews prior to this one, that if you don't have money right now or you're struggling or you're trying to figure out your next move or money's tight, please take care of yourself first. Take care of your family first. That's kind of your priority. Don't go spending it on a digital comic or anything like that. But if you go that route because you're trying to take care of yourself or your family, definitely follow on social media, share it, like it, engage it. Great way how to stay up to date. If anything, it's a great way how to be informed. Those things do matter. Liking things, engaging, commenting on Facebook pages or Twitter or Instagram, it goes a long way and it's free for the most part. So please go do that. And if you do have some extra money lying around, go support this project. No contribution is too small. $12. You might say, oh well, it's not that $3,000 or it's not $30 or $29. $12 goes a long way because if 100 people, each pick a $12 share of it, that's
Right.
$1,200 and gets us closer. Or Travis, I'm not part of the book, so it gets Travis closer. I shouldn't put myself into that category just yet. Someday, closer to funding and getting this book published, and then it'll be out there and you could read it and you could see what it is. And I think everybody's going to enjoy this book. So I think that that's a great place to end. And I appreciate you always being on.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. Yeah. One of the other things I'd say too about this, um, this is not something that's going to get picked up, right? Like a Voodoo Nations or a Broke Down could get picked up at some point. There's so many contracts and so many different deals that were made to make this book together. This may be the only opportunity you ever to get this book. So, I really want to point that out there as well. It's not going to be readily available like some of my other work. There's going to be a limited print run because I want to honor my commitment and not take advantage of anybody.
Yeah, so obviously this is something that is really Kickstarter exclusive and
Right.
Icon exclusive in many ways.
Right.
So obviously it's kind of one of those things, and I hate to do fear of missing out, but if you're interested in this book, it's something that you should probably prioritize at the top of your list rather than at the bottom. if you're interested in it and you like
Sure.
what you see and you like what we spoke about. And let's say that you're still on the fence. There's a bunch of stuff on the Kickstarter page that can give you an idea of where this book is going. So
You
go
have
check.
to read 5 stories.
So there you go. I mean, it's you can get a real sense of the book of where it's going, and so I think that's the best way how to sell it. I think that's the best place to end, and I think that's a wrap.